Good evening. My name is Janet Fisher Hughes. I'd like to welcome you to this candidates forum on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Camden County and the Cherry Hill Zone PTA. I will be your moderator this evening. I am on the board of League of Women Voters of Camden County, as well as League of Women Voters of New Jersey, and I'm joined by fellow league member Jessica Grace Hamilton, who will be our timekeeper this evening. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. This means that we never support or oppose individual candidates or political parties for any elective office. The League of Women Voters welcomes all adult citizens, women and men, and students as young as 16 who support our mission. Membership in the League provides opportunities to be involved in unique activities, including aspects of the political process, without running for office or being active in a political party. For example, keeping time and moderating a forum are both valuable and interesting experiences. We'll train you. Registering voters is also rewarding. In a naturalization ceremony, registering new citizens is inspirational. Attending a council meeting wearing a button puts officials on notice that the League is watching. If any of this sounds interesting and you would like to join us, please log on to lwvnj.org to become a member. The League also provides information about upcoming elections. This is provided by our general information website called Vote 411. Search for it. The voter registration deadline for the upcoming election is this coming Tuesday, October 18th. And we want to remind voters that there are 3 ways they can vote in the upcoming general election. Vote by mail ballot. Registered voters can apply for a vote by mail ballot by following the instructions found at vote.nj.gov or contacting their county clerk. The deadline for applying for a vote by mail ballot is November 1st. Remember, vote by mail ballots cannot be returned to any early voting location or at any polling place for this election. In-person early voting, this option enables all registered voters to cast their ballot in person using a voting machine during a 9-day period prior to election day. You can now choose to vote in person when it's most convenient for your schedule. And in Camden County, 7 in-person early voting locations will be open Saturday, October 29th through Sunday, November 6th. Hours will be Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. No appointment necessary. At your polling place on election day, you may vote in person from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Election day is November 8th, Tuesday. Now, moving on to tonight's forum and format, I wish to reiterate the League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. Also, it is league policy that the moderator must not be eligible to vote in the election being moderated, and therefore should have no personal interest in the outcome. I live in Pennsauken, and Jessica, the timekeeper, lives in Haddonfield. I will now review the basic structure of this evening's forum. The timekeeper, Jessica, will give a 15-second warning to candidates by holding up the yellow card. She'll demonstrate that right now. Then she will signal that the response time is up by showing the red card. I will allow candidates to briefly finish a sentence. Please come quickly to a conclusion when the time has run out. Time may not be banked nor given to another candidate. In this election, we have 10 candidates. 2 of the candidates are vying for 1 unexpired term. Those 2 candidates are Kimberly Gallagher and Benjamin Ovadia. The remaining 8 candidates are vying for 3 3-year terms. 3 of the candidates are incumbents. And thankfully, all of the candidates have joined us this evening. The forum will begin with opening statements, followed by audience questions submitted in advance by Cherry Hill voters. We will end with closing statements from each of the candidates. I will remind the candidates to stick to the issues relevant to the office of the Board of Education and not bring in personal matters or other matters unrelated to that office. So let us begin with opening statements. The candidates will speak in random order, and they each have 90 seconds with a 15-second warning. And we will start with Jennifer Sharman.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I did not know. Again, thank you. My name is Jennifer Sharman. I would like to start by saying thank you to the Cherry Hill Zone PTA and the League of Women Voters for hosting and administrating this year's Candidates Forum. I am very grateful for this opportunity. Some of you may have read my bio already that's been out and published in different medias. For those of you that do not, I will briefly give you some personal background. I am married to a Marine veteran who grew up here in Cherry Hill. We are a blended family with 4 wonderful children. I have 3 sons who are ages 17, 20, and 21. My 17-year-old goes to Cherry Hill West. He's a senior, and I have a daughter who is 24. My husband and all our children have gone through the Cherry Hill public school system, ranging from Clara Barton to Carusi to Cherry Hill West. I personally grew up in Northeast Philadelphia and had always admired Cherry Hill. It was always a special treat for me to come to the Cherry Hill Mall as a child. And I always heard about the great school district that Cherry Hill had. When I became a blended family, I was very happy that my children would have the opportunity to participate in such a highly recommended school district. I am also a registered nurse for over 25 years. And in 2010, I earned my bachelor's degree in, 2018, I earned my bachelor's degree in healthcare administration. I have been working at a Medicaid and Medicare health insurance company since 2012.
Time's up.
And thank you for this opportunity.
Kimberly Gallagher is next.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kimberly Gallagher, and I moved to Cherry Hill in November 2015. I grew up in Ambler, Pennsylvania, and moved to New Jersey after marrying my husband. My husband and I chose Cherry Hill specifically for the school district. I have 2 elementary age daughters, and I have a teenage stepson who attends Eastern Regional High School. I have a unique perspective as I have gone through elementary, middle school, and high school with my stepson, and I'm experiencing elementary school again with my 2 daughters at Horace Mann. I received my bachelor's in arts in philosophy from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and my master's of business administration from Northeastern University, where I concentrated in supply chain management. My background can help look critically at the Cherry Hill Public Schools operations and think of better strategies to create better efficiencies within the system. My career has 2 distinctive roads. Prior to having children, I worked in the corporate setting. My career focused on supply chain management, inventory management, sourcing and purchasing, and customer service. After having children, my career pivoted to education. I have taught supply chain management and marketing and operations for an MBA program. I look forward to spending time on the board to bring my, let's just call it, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Ovadia is next.
Thank you. First, thanks to the League of Women Voters and Cherry Hill Zone PTA. I see each brought a Janet and a Jessica. So I don't know what the chances of, but it seems pretty low. I've been a resident of Cherry Hill for 15 years. I have two children going to East now and one that will start full day kindergarten next year. I've got about a 10-year history of school advocacy within Cherry Hill. I was in the Sharp system. I was corresponding secretary and PTA president, and then I moved on to a couple district-wide advocacy things, Chinese language, elementary school music concerts, and fair funding. Was a glutton for even more punishment, and then eventually led me to being appointed on the board and then elected to the board for a 3-year term that is expiring. So I have a passion for Cherry Hill. It's my go-to when it comes to serving as a volunteer. I believe that the center of our township and the institution that matters most and where we put our most trust and where people turn to for our reputation and for what's excellent on a daily basis is our schools. I think it takes a lot of work and effort to make them great. And I've always enjoyed doing that as part of my my civic service to the community. I believe our best days are ahead, and I believe there's a lot of challenging work, and I'd like to be a part of it. So I'm asking for votes for an additional one-year term. Tonight, the statements I'm going to make are my own and do not reflect anything on the board. They are just for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sunny Reed.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to meet everybody and hear everybody's perspectives. I really look forward to getting to know everyone and working together in some capacity. I love Cherry Hill. I've wanted to live here forever. I don't know why. I've lived in New Jersey, possibly because I come from a part of New Jersey that does not have the diversity and equity that Cherry Hill is pushing for, and possibly because Cherry Hill residents, for the most part, have been open to these progressive and wonderful ideas in our schools. Something that I'm passionate about, and a lot of you might know this, is DEI, and that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is something that I live every day. These are not buzzwords for me. So if this comes up a lot tonight, that's because I'm one-track minded, but I will be consistent in my values and my vision. I'm currently a doctoral student in childhood studies at Rutgers University, Camden. I also work as a graduate assistant in the Division of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civic Engagement, where I help run several youth programs for children in Camden. I've also helped spearhead a rites of passage ceremony for students who are Black and Brown, who are first-generation students who have never made it through the school system as well. So I am very excited to get to know everybody and for everyone to get to know me and work together with everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Kathy DeCampley.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting us be here today, and thank you for everyone tuning in to hear us speak today. My name is Kathy DeCampley. I moved to Cherry Hill in 2020, actually the weekend that literally the world shut down and I wasn't sure if my movers were going to show up. I was moving to Cherry Hill. I have a daughter in kindergarten at Russell Knight. I grew up mostly in Glassboro, kind of floated around a little bit around Clayton and Franklinville. I have a bachelor's in political science from Trinity Washington University and a master's in library and information science from Drexel. I'm a librarian specializing in emerging technology and teen services. I write book reviews for 2 professional trade magazines. I'm also a certified school library media specialist. I've worked in elementary and high school libraries. Bringing a lifelong love of learning and also a love of literacy is something that's really important to me and something that I would bring to the board if I were elected.
Thank you. Next, Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. My name is Adam Greenbaum, and I'm running for a seat on the Cherry Hill Board of Education to make a positive impact on my community. My family and I moved to Cherry Hill 11 years ago, and the great reputation of the schools was a significant part of that decision. I want to be a part of that success story. I also come from a family of educators, and I'm passionate about education. As an involved parent, I've regularly attended board and committee meetings since before my son started school, and I'm well-versed in the wide array of issues facing our district. Thank you very much to the Zone PTA and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, and I look forward to a lively discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Renee Chairfane.
Hello, and thank you everyone for being here and giving us the opportunity to allow you to get to know us better. My name is Renee Chairfane, but some of you in the community might know me as Renee Solomeo. Although I did not have the choice to grow up here, I did and have taken the opportunity to venture out to other parts of the country, and here I am. So I've always come back. Like I said, I was born and raised here. I attended Thomas Paine Elementary School, Carusi, and I'm a graduate of Cherry Hill West. My husband, who is also a graduate of Cherry Hill West, and I have 3 daughters, one of which is in Kingston Elementary School, and the other 2 have yet to join the public school community here, but they are next in line. I have my bachelor's and master's degree in chemistry and my bachelor's and master's degree in nursing with a specialty in nursing education. I'm a former high school teacher and college professor. I'm a published chemist with experience in the pharmaceutical industry. And like I said, I'm a nurse and specifically a nurse educator. And as you can see, education is a passion of mine. I'm also passionate about making sure that everyone has a fair chance to achieve their goals. And as a board member, I hope to open the line of communication to ensure that everybody's voices are heard. I have a strong passion for mental and physical needs of our students. And I hope that I strive to make sure that we are making appropriate decisions to improve the educational outcomes of our district and our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joel Mayer.
Thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and Cherry Hill Zone PTA for putting this together so that the community can learn a little bit more about everybody who's here at the table today. I have been a Cherry Hill resident for 24 years, 3 children, all 3 at Cherry Hill West. All 3 went to Russell Knight for elementary school, 2 to Rosa, and then 1 to Carusi before going on to West. And for those of you who have attended meetings or checked them out via Zoom or seen what's available online now about the candidates, you know who I am. What matters to me is that the students at all of our schools have a fair opportunity to succeed, that their paths are clear for them, regardless of what that path is, whether it's the somewhat more traditional role onto college or the military or some career or other technical school. I am also very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, having volunteered as the CPEACE liaison for the committee. I have always strived myself personally to listen to how individuals in different groups learn differently, hear differently, and I have always tried to push to make sure everybody has an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Gina Winters.
Hi, good evening. My name is Gina Winters, and I was appointed to technical difficulties. Thanks. Try that again. Good evening. My name is Gina Winters. I am a Cherry Hill resident. I've been here for almost 20 years now, and I was appointed in August of 2022 to fill a vacant seat on the Board of Education. That vacancy, the term that I was appointed to, will expire in December. So I am asking for a full 3-year term to continue the great work that I've been doing since being appointed. Everything that I say tonight is my own, and it has nothing to do with the board and what the board officially says. This is me personally speaking to the community tonight. I earned my bachelor's in political science from Rutgers, and then I went on to get a master's in public policy, where my focus was education policy. My primary research interests were school finance and early childhood education, which I think prepared me well for all the diverse issues that the board is facing going into the next year. In the short time that I've been a member of the school board, I have really enjoyed being out in the community and engaging with Cherry Hill families about their aspirations for our school district. And I would love the opportunity to continue to work with members of the board, the administration, and the community on the critical issues that are facing our schools. I have 3 children in the school district, a kindergartner, a 5th grader, and an 8th grader. And that means I am personally invested in making our schools the best they can be for all students in our community. I am focused on looking towards the future of our schools for the next generation of Cherry Hill students. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. And finally, Nicholas Gaudio Jr.
Good evening. Thank you to the Cherry Hill Zone PTA and the League of Women Voters for hosting and administering this year's Candidates Forum. And thank you to all Cherry Hill residents for giving me the opportunity to represent all of you. My name is Nick Gaudio, and I've been a resident of Cherry Hill for the majority of my life, from Kingston through Carusi and West, and having moved back to town as an adult 11 years ago so that my children could also have the same excellent academic and social experience I did throughout my childhood. Prior to the COVID pandemic, my family's experience with the school system had been all positive. I began to take issue with the BoE when it started to publicly demonstrate its willingness to politicize our schools and push its agenda on our children. Parents were told that we were incapable of making medical decisions for our children and teaching our children morals based on our belief systems. The BoE treated parents at BoE meetings as adversaries before they even had the opportunity to voice their concerns. Public comment periods were often decreased in an effort to silence the majority. The district then passed the largest tax increase in township history through a deceptive and questionable process, ensuring that those of us who agree that our schools are in need of repair could not trust the integrity and honesty of those overseeing our tax dollars. Our BoE needs to be reconstructed with members who will responsibly ensure proper prioritized allocation of our already approved bond funding, respect the rights of parents to oversee their children's education and incorporate their family values, and encourage the residents of Cherry Hill to participate in major decisions in curriculum, budget, health, education in an inclusive manner without discrimination. Cherry Hill's excellent public school
Time's up.
system.
Time's up, Mr. Gaudio. Thank you very much. Now we come to the question and answer portion of the forum, and I have used my discretion as moderator to select as many different questions as possible in the available time. We will have time to ask 6 or 7 of the questions this evening. Some of the questions submitted by Cherry Hill residents were similar to each other. Please don't be upset if your particular question is not used. And candidates will be called in random order using a sequence I prepared in advance. My order is designed so that as much as possible, no candidate falls in any position, like first or last, more often than the other candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question with a 15-second warning. And we will start with the first question. How would you describe your role as a school board member? And we start with Renee Sherfain.
As a school board member, my role would be to ensure that the administration of the district are creating and enforcing policies that are at the best interest of the students and the staff in this community, as well as the parents. I'm here to add whatever my professional and personal background experiences have allowed me to have a vision, and to add that to the decisions that we make as a board as a whole. I will be a collaborator, a level-headed team member of the board, and hope to work together to make sure that the future is meeting the needs of our students.
Thank you. Next, Nicholas Gaudio.
As a school board member, I feel that it would be my obligation to ensure that our district relearns what it's like to cheer loudly for our accomplishments and encourage all students to overachieve, not to continue to dumb down our system with non-academic and politically motivated re-education. Cherry Hill's excellent public school reputation was not built with participation trophies and silent claps. And I would ensure that we encourage accomplishments.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Sharman.
As a school board member, I would utilize my nursing experience by using my communication, my health experience, the education experience that I have with communicating with patients, my collaboration, my assessing, and my ability to provide outcomes, because as a nurse, that's what our job is. And I can bring that to the table to make sure our students get the best outcomes and the best education that out of our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kathy DeCampley.
The school board is responsible for approving policies, approving budgets. They're not educators. The teachers are the experts here, and it's the board that should be supporting them and giving them the resources they need, not taking the place of the teachers. And so if I were on the board, I would consider it my responsibility to make sure that the administration and the teachers have everything they need so that they can teach the students and they can all succeed.
Thank you. Next, Joel Mayer.
So as a board member, should I continue, would be exactly what it has been for the last 9 months since I was appointed to the board. And I see that chiefly as being an active and engaged listener, someone who has been able to truly hear the issues, concerns, and criticisms from various stakeholders throughout the community. and to attempt as best I can, together with my colleagues on the board, to implement policies that will best ensure that our students learn with passion and that our teachers and staff can teach with passion. Ultimately, has been my role, and I would hope it will continue to assist the board in not just coming up with better answers to questions and issues, but coming up with better questions so that we won't need to find better answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Gallagher.
Hi. Board member. I think my major focus would be on fiscal responsibility. The district, in my opinion, over the last decades, not just this administration, but prior administrations, have lacked the ability to monitor the academics and the maintenance of the buildings, as we saw with the astronomical bond vote from a couple weeks ago. I think it's important to balance the academics and the management and the maintenance of our buildings so that this doesn't happen in the future, or the price of the bond is not as extreme. In another way of monitoring the superintendent and the administration, I think we should do more community outreach and try to bring the community back together. There is major division, and I believe that the administration is responsible for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Benjamin Ovadia.
Okay, it's a hard question to do in 60 seconds, but I'm going to try to do very quickly and speak quickly. The first thing that I think is really needs to be cherished is the board exists to understand what the community's vision is for its school and interact with administration to make that happen. That's a difficult and complicated process, but vitally important. We exist on a policy level, ensuring financial stewardship. All the work we do is in public, so there's a level of transparency that's necessary. We owe it to ourselves in education to be at a macro level looking at trends and opportunities. What are the challenges? The national trends often are impacting us locally. And what can we learn from our subject matter experts in our district staff to be able to make the best decisions, but also engage the public so that we're constantly aware of what's going on and what needs to happen next. It's an institutional role. You don't, as an individual, do much of anything on the board, but the 9 members come up with the best solutions, and then everyone champions those together. It's also important to be available in the community.
Thank you. Next, Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So I envision my role on the board as advocating for both our students and our teachers, keeping in mind our district goals. I'd like to be able to work collaboratively with the administration, but also to be able to act as a check and balance with my vote. And always to strive for positive outcomes for our children and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Gina Winters.
Thank you. I think the primary role of a board member is to collaborate with the community, to define the vision the community has for its public education system going forward, and then to make sure that the goal is to shape a public education system in the community to ensure that all students in Cherry Hill, regardless of which school they go to and what their background is, have the opportunity to fulfill their greatest potential. That potential is not only supporting academic excellence, but a passion for learning, the skills they need to go beyond our classrooms, and to support both student and staff wellness going forward.
Thank you. Next, Sunny Reed.
I come to this and I see my role as a school board member as, providing representation, communication, and collaboration. Representation to those families and students who feel that they're a part of a school system, but not a school community. Communication with the same constituents or school members in the community as well as among the board members and the administration, and collaboration with those same people. I don't view this as something for me. I view this role as being a representative of the students who have adults telling them what to do day in and day out. I view this as an opportunity to engage those students and those families who might perhaps not feel as though that they have a voice here. So that's what I come here. I come here for them and to do what's best by those people who feel unheard.
Thank you. Our next question is as follows. How many Board of Education committee meetings and action meetings have you attended over the past year? And we will start with Kathy DeCampley.
That is a good question. Off the top of my head,
Best estimate, of course.
I would say a handful, 4 or 5, maybe. I do have a 5-year-old in swim and dance and all of those fun things. So as you know, when you have someone in elementary school, attending board meetings can get challenging.
All right. Next, Joel Mayer.
Well, I guess I would need to do math. I've attended as a board member every board meeting since I was sworn in, which was early February. I won't do the math, but 2 times 9, so 18 or 19. I did miss one. The only one I missed was to take my middle daughter to New York for her 23rd birthday because she picked a restaurant she found on TikTok and said, we need to go. So I wasn't here that night. I have also attended every business and facilities committee meeting since February. There would have been at least 8 or 9 of those. Aside from the meetings, which of course are tremendously important, I've spent at least probably 5 to 6 hours, maybe 10 a week on memos and also background reading to be prepared for all the meetings that I'm fortunate to attend.
Thank you. Next, Nicholas Gaudio Jr.
All right, so I was also trying to crunch the numbers here. It's been at least a dozen in person between the board meetings and different forums and other special meetings, at least as many online remotely as well. So give a wag of about 24, 2 dozen or so.
Thank you. And this is not a test. So, just round number, approximate, your best estimate. We're not trying to make this a difficult question. Jennifer Sharman.
I'm not even going to guess at what the number is. I do attend the meetings. I attend them, especially if it's something that I feel passionate about and that's important and relevant to what's going on in my community. And the most important factor is that if I was a board member, I would be attending the meetings because I take anything that I do very seriously and I give my 110%. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So I have to admit that I didn't know that the committee meetings were public allowance for attendance. So committee specifically, I have not attended any of those, but general board meetings, I've attended roughly 75 to 80%, either online or in person, about 50% of that in person. Over the last year, I've actually dedicated my time more to being involved in the PTA at my school. A little special shout out to Kingston PTA, best PTA out there. So right now I'm more actively involved in the smaller level stuff with my daughter and in that part of the community, but general board meetings, roughly 75 to 80% over the last year.
Thank you. And Gina Winters.
Sure. Zoom is a blessing, as is YouTube, and it allowed me to attend almost every board meeting before I was appointed to the board in August of the general meetings that are live streamed and then recorded over YouTube. Once I was appointed to the board, I was assigned to 2 committees. I'm on policy and legislation as well as curriculum and instruction, and I attend those 2 meetings back to back monthly, as well as all the board action meetings and town halls and all the other stuff that we do. I will say that as a sitting board member, most of the work actually isn't done in the meetings. It's all the behind the scenes preparation that we take very seriously going into these meetings to be sure that we understand the issues from all aspects and we're ready to discuss them and think about them with the members of the community. That way we can really interact with everybody and figure out what the best policies are going forward, seeing it from all perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunny Reed.
To be honest, the past year, I haven't been able to attend any meetings because I was in class. So my commitment to education is right there. So, however, the minute I knew that my semester and my coursework was over and I was entering exam periods and going into my dissertation phase of my work is when I started immediately putting my time into getting involved with the Board of Education and the PTA. So while I regret that I was learning at those other times. My commitment to, as soon as I had the time available, to being involved, coming here to do this now, as soon as I had the time, I hope makes up for that and my eagerness to learn about what everybody's doing. So thank you. And I'm just being honest.
Thank you. Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. Answer this a couple different ways. I know it's not a test, but it feels like a test, right? I think the number for me is probably 35 or more. And I'm trying to do the math. Strategic planning went into meeting in the whole, so I'm not counting that as a separate meeting, but I am on policy and legislation. I've only missed one board meeting this year, sort of in that full piece. So let's say 35 plus. I will tell you, to echo, I don't know if it's Gina or Ms. Winters tonight, but but Gina's sentiment, there is a lot of work that goes into it. I don't know if people really know that. But as president this year, I'm probably spending 20 to 30 hours a week in this volunteer service. But of course, the board role itself. So last year I was a committee chair as well as liaison for Camden County Educational Services Commission. I was still spending 10 to 15 hours a week. So it's a lot more than the meetings, but yeah, I think I've only missed a few meetings really in the past 12 months. And they're always good.
Thank you. Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So in short, all of them. With the action meetings, I try to attend them in person when I can. Occasionally I catch them online or on the replay, but realistically, I haven't missed one in 2.5 years. As an involved parent, I like to know what's going on in the district, especially during COVID. It was always important to know what the district's decisions were going to be and to provide input when I can. Committee meetings, I attend them when I see an item of interest, but I do always check the agendas there. And, I'll say I'm not attending these meetings just because I'm running for board. I'm running for board because I already attend these meetings. I'm already a very involved parent, and this is a way to have more involvement and have a greater impact on the community.
Thank you. Kimberly Gallagher.
So I attend the majority of my Board of Education meetings through Zoom. So I probably have missed a couple through the past year, but if you do 2 a month for 12 months, approximately, let's say 20-ish or so. Thankfully, the Zoom is an option. And when meetings went back in person, comments were only allowed while you were in the building. And I made comments regarding that, as I felt like it limited a community voice by only having people who were able to attend in person to comment. I also feel if I do get elected to the board, it would be wonderful to push for committee meetings to also be available via Zoom. As Deacon Pelly said, it's difficult at times with activities and whatnot to attend meetings. And I also think it's a way to engage more with the community to allow for other access to committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, did you support the recent bond referendum or not? And why or why not? And we start with Sunny Reed.
I absolutely did support the recent bond referendum. I did have the recent bond that was passed. I supported it because I do believe strongly that good school infrastructure promotes good, strong student safety, promotes a positive learning environment. I did have questions. I did have questions about it. There were some reservations that I did have, particularly with certain members of the community being unable to afford this substantial tax increase that came associated with it. I also, just because I haven't lived here as long as everybody else, I did want to know a little bit more about, other school physical building improvements that might have been made or not made in the past year before that. But ultimately, I supported it because I support safe and positive learning environments for our students.
Thank you. Next, Gina Winters.
I absolutely supported the bond referendum that was passed overwhelmingly by the community by almost a 70-30 split. I think the final yes vote was 69%. The proof is in the pudding. The board and the district went out for 4 years and talked to the community about what they wanted for Cherry Hill's future. We discussed what people saw as this opportunity to really transform our schools, a once in a generation opportunity to look forward and see the environment that we wanted for our teachers and for our students. And I think a lot of the concerns that were brought up during the COVID pandemic about facilities, about air quality for our teachers and students, there were simply things that could not be done with a yearly maintenance budget because we didn't have the infrastructure to put in the kind of air quality systems that we needed. We listened, we heard you, we worked together, and as a community, we passed the bond referendum 70% to 30%. I think that speaks well for the collaboration that we can do when working together with our community.
Thank you. Next, Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. Yes, I supported the bond. In many ways, in my time on the board, I've helped in many ways to build the bond. As strategic planning chair, we looked at everything that came out of the last attempt in 2018 that didn't work and what people said, and we ran down every single one of those. Can we build new schools? Can we take it out of operations? And this was probably 18 months of work on its own. Then we did about 30 public meetings that I personally attended, talking to community members about what was important to them. We switched architects, we did different things. We launched, Miriam and I on the board launched the public campaign at Town Council at the end of July of this year. And since then, I think it's been at least 15 hours of work every week to get out the message, talk to people, get questions answered. Constant availability comes to mind, but it's important, it's critical. It's critical first and foremost, as this role dictates, for our students. It's critical for the adults in our buildings, the teachers, staff, and administrators. It's critical for our community and for our tomorrow.
Thank you. Next, Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. I supported the bond and actively advocated for it. It started with an understanding of how we got in this situation and the work of the Fair Funding Committee. The transparency in developing the bond over more than 40 plus meetings, town halls, building tours. This bond was very different than the 2018 bond. I understood it. I understood what went into it, what we're getting for our money, and why it was so critical. Through the work of the Fair Funding Committee, we addressed the root cause of the funding shortfall, and this bond will help fix and modernize our schools. With the second grader in the district, I'm fortunate enough to see mostly the full benefit of it. But outside of that, I'm happy to make a generational investment in education in Cherry Hill. It's my home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Gallagher.
I was a reluctant yes. I understood the need to maintain our buildings. However, I was frustrated by the lack of accountability that the administration and the board had during the bond referendum discussions to acknowledge their responsibility. The buildings have needed work for decades, and at some point, the administration and board could have made decisions to pull back on other aspects of the budget to address various issues, such as roofs, HVAC systems. However, they did not do that. They knowingly and purposefully neglected the maintenance of our schools, and now we're paying for that. I voted yes only because I felt like I was cutting my nose off to spite my face if I didn't. I didn't want my child, or children, I should say, and the teachers in the district to be working in unsafe environments, except I was really hoping that the district would acknowledge their responsibility and prove to us that they will be better for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joel Mayer.
I completely and wholeheartedly supported the bond, worked tirelessly along with my board colleagues and others in the community towards the success of the bond, and am very proud of what role that I played with regards to that. I would also want to take the opportunity to thank those that were before me, board members and other community members who did a ton of work to allow us to sort of take that baton and move it across the finish line. So that they deserve a great deal of respect for all the hard work that they did as well. This bond is an investment in the future for all of our students. None of mine are likely to see many of those benefits, but that's not why I worked so hard. I did it because I know that there are more students yet to come to this district that deserve great schools, great learning environments, and I'm looking forward to being able to help provide that with this bond money.
Thank you. Next, Kathy DeCampley.
I did support the bond, and I understand that it's never fun to vote to raise your own taxes. When I was in high school, someone I knew moved to Cherry Hill, and we said, oh, he's going to one of those fancy schools. And then I got here and I went to my daughter's school, and I was a bit surprised by the condition of it. So when the bond was up, I said, of course, I'm going to vote for this. You can't ignore ADA compliance. It's the law. And everyone needs safe schools. The teachers deserve safe working conditions, and the students also do. So I was happy to support it.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Sharman.
Of course, I support air quality and security and ADA compliance, but I did not support this bond. Just because I didn't support the bond doesn't mean that I don't support repairs of the school and the importance of that and the safety of our children. I didn't support the bond because I do not feel as though, although you guys say that you surveyed the community, not all the community was surveyed. There's people that have kids that no longer go to the school that did not get the information as easily as, because it all went out to all the school age children's parents and community and guardians. I was out in my community, and those members of the community did not even know that what was going on and that there was an election on a different day other than November 8th. So I think that this bond could have been done better. I think we could have prioritized better, especially during a recession, and especially with people who can't even afford food. And I think that it was shameful as how it went down. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Nicholas Gaudio Jr.
Okay, the reason I did not support this bond was not because it was snuck in on an October Thursday evening during the Greek Agora, moving traditional voting locations. And also, it wasn't only because the schools were pushing yes votes on back to school night very adamantly and publicly. And it wasn't because they did not notify seniors about this. And my own parents, for example, only knew about the bond because of me telling them, and so did all of their neighbors because they told their neighbors about them. So those were not the reasons I did not support the bond. Just a few examples, which I'll read until I'm out of time, are the $88 million for Cherry Hill East, including $5 million in masonry repairs, $5 million to repair walls in the auditorium, $4 million for auditorium renovations. Cherry Hill West, $65 million, $2 million for new flooring in the classrooms, $500,000 for new lockers. Cherry Hill East, $2 million for locker room renovations. Beck, $500,000 for library renovations. Oh, wait, $3 million for classroom doors at Cherry Hill East.
Time's
The
up.
list goes on and on.
Thank you. And finally, Renee Sherfain.
Okay, so first of all, I don't really like the phrasing of supporting the bond or not supporting the bond, just in the sense that I think that most of us can agree that the safety and health of our children are number one, and that's the most important thing. That being said, this was an incredibly difficult decision for me because I have attended these schools and they pretty much look exactly the same as they did when I attended them, however many years ago. But ultimately, I was a no decision on this. And the reason for that is because I felt as though this was more of a big wish list than it was necessarily an immediate needs list. And there was no accountability or plans for the future on how we don't get here in another 20 years and need to pass another bond. There's also things that are important to me and the rest of the community that were not necessarily addressed that potentially could have been, like expansion of SAC and preschool options. I personally spend $35,000 in preschool and daycare, and then now have to increase my taxes for additional things that I think could have been addressed before. That being said, I appreciate all your hard work, and I'm also very happy that I don't have to start over on square one and we can move forward.
Thank you very much. Our next question is, if elected, what would be your top 2 or 3 goals for your first year as board member? And if you are an incumbent, what would be your top 2 or 3 goals for the first year in this new term? And we will start with Gina Winters.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think the first and most obvious goal, especially after that last question, is that we need to ensure that the bond referendum funds that are coming to the district are implemented in a timely manner so that our teachers have safe, adequate instructional space to teach our students. The second thing, and I think this is critically important, is school climate issues. When I look at our students in our schools, I want to know that all students feel safe, welcomed, and supported in the school environment that they're in, regardless of their background or beliefs. I think that's key. And thirdly, I really think we need a renewed focus on early childhood education in this school district. If you look at the data from the district, you can start to see disparities in achievement as early as third grade in math, reading, and gifted program acceptance for different groups of students. I really would like to see extra energy devoted to teaching in those critical early learning years to set students up for success so that all students in the district can achieve their potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sunny Reed.
So for the top 2 to 3 goals, my first would be to hear more from the families who are dealing with some challenges with special education in Cherry Hill. I feel that having a son who, just on a very low end of the spectrum of what I could be dealing with. I have heard some very distressing experiences in trying to get their needs met, especially with compliance with ADA. One thing that I would love to see, for example, is sign language interpreters and other foreign language interpreters at board meetings so that everybody can be included. That's true inclusion and equity across the board. And I understand that with Title III funds, these things can be provided. The second would be to talk to the curriculum committee and see how my expertise in diversity, equity, inclusion, and what I'm doing at Rutgers Camden can help. And also talk to the students and see what they would like to and what belonging actually means to them and how we can meet their needs.
Thank you. Next, Renee Sherfain.
So again, to follow up what we were just discussing, first and foremost would be my attention to the bond and making sure it's maintained the way that it's supposed to be maintained in a timely fashion. Maybe even if there's any opportunities to reevaluate, I know that there's a clause in there to redistribute the funds as needed. So if there's any way to take back from things that were already accounted for that we might not necessarily need, and make sure that we're not in the same position 20 years, 30 years from now. I will take it my personal responsibility to make sure that I'm paving a clear path for our future and making sure the very old buildings that we have, even if they're renovated, are not crumbling in 20 years. I think another thing that's important is SAC and preschool expansion. There's a lot of people on SAC wait lists right now, and that makes it really difficult for people to hold jobs and have their children at school. And then the education specifically in the earlier ages, we need to recover from the last couple of years and what that has done to our children. So refocusing back on the fundamentals and math and reading and all of that would be top priorities to ensure that the future is brighter for our kids.
Thank you. Next, Nicholas Gaudio.
All right, so if I was elected, the 3 top items that I would try and achieve would be number 1, to ensure responsible spending of the already approved tax dollars towards the bond. It's already happened, even though I was against it. Want to make sure that those dollars are spent responsibly and that there's oversight on all of the line items there. Number 2, I want to make sure we respect and encourage all parents to speak out at Board of Ed meetings and to get involved with their children's education. We have to embrace their varying points of view and their diverse family values. I want to make sure that the board continues to do that for everybody. And number 3, I would make sure we had some sort of committee set up, if I had support of the rest of the board, to investigate and stop all incidents in which political agendas are being pushed on our young children at all age and grade levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jennifer Sharman.
Well, again, just like my fellow board or almost board members, prospective board members would say is, again, transparency and holding school board accountable for the spending regarding the bond, making sure that we don't fall into this situation again 20 years from now. The major problem that I had with this bond was because we shouldn't have been this far in this despair to begin with. Secondly, more transparency on our curriculum and more focus on core academics and STEMs. I think that our overall status for our education right now is going down the wrong way, into the wrong direction, and more respect and inclusion for all families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kathy DeCampley.
I would focus on having fully funded libraries, which would include certified school library media specialists in every building and paraprofessionals to support them. New technology, adequate budget for materials and digital resources, and support by the board and the administration should they encounter any challenges to their materials. I would also focus on equity through social emotional learning so that all students are prepared for adulthood and all the challenges that come with it. Trauma-informed education so that teachers know how to teach each individual student that comes into their classroom, and differentiated resources for each student.
Thank you. Joel Mayer.
Number one, support student achievement. Within the last couple of days, the ACT reported new stats, which were alarming. They're national stats, but these things tend to be mirrored here as well. That only 22% of the students that took the ACT met all 5 of the subject topics on the ACT, and and more alarmingly, 42% didn't meet a single one. So number one for me is to support student achievement, understand where we can identify best practices, both at the staff level and the learning level, so that we can increase student achievement. Number two is to celebrate diversity, include everyone, promote equity. And as far as the bond, I'm on the Business and Facilities Committee, so I am certain that I will be involved heavily in ensuring that the bond money is appropriately spent.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Gallagher.
My 3 top items I'd like to focus on are communication, district consistency, and fiscal responsibility. Communication, similarly to the way our principals and superintendents send out a weekly email, I think it would be amazing if our board sent out even just a biweekly email prior to the meetings, just saying like a link to the agendas, items on vote, just different information, and maybe like a highlight of different board members. District consistency, teachers, principals, communications are wildly different. It would be amazing if the district had a canned template that each teacher and principal needed to focus on with their weekly emails and kindergarten orientations and all that stuff. Finally, fiscal responsibility, that while the bond is done, I think we need to start moving forward to make sure that the district is responsibly spending our money so that we can ensure that the academics and the maintenance of the buildings are done adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat a couple themes here. Financial stewardship is going to be extremely important. The size of the bond and the commitment we've made to the community in terms of accountability, transparency, and oversight of this process is massive. It means public report outs. It means weekly check. The amount of work that is necessary cannot be overestimated. But at the same time, knowing that we're doing all the preventive maintenance never to get here again is also important. So that financial stewardship piece is going to be a huge piece of what needs to go on. Remaining a competitive employer and being an employer of choice is going to be mission critical. We are facing a national shortage of drivers, of teachers. People are leaving the profession. Fewer are going in. The most important relationship in our school buildings is between teachers, and student. That has to be preserved. We have to continue to get the best. And being an employer of choice is critical. Third, academic excellence. We're in a post-COVID world. There's a lot of remediation to be done. We want to define what it means to be great and achieve that and give world-class experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So going in this order, there's going to be a lot of repetition. But first of all, ensuring that we responsibly spend money that comes in from the bond, making important improvements, prioritizing issues that are of health and safety, and of course, modernizing our buildings. Second is ADA compliance and accessibility. This is a cause that I've taken up in my workplace as well. It shouldn't be a complicated issue when there's funding available. With new work being done because of the bond, it's imperative that ADA compliance and accessibility is built into that. as well as retrofitting existing buildings. Just because they're older doesn't mean that kids should miss out because certain facilities aren't accessible. And then lastly is school climate. And this is a complicated issue with a complicated solution, but examining what our role is in processes like HIB, the S12 process, code of conduct, taking a look at how to correct bad behavior and if that should go down a disciplinary route or more of a corrective route, and looking at the root causes of that. And I'm
Thank
out
you.
of time.
Thank you. You're out of time. All right, the next question. How should our school district support and protect the LGBTQ plus students and their rights? And we will start with Jennifer Sharman.
I feel that we should be, as a nurse, that we should be having more resources available to our schools to support the LGBTQ community, making sure that we have our social workers with the adequate resources, and our, not social workers, I'm sorry, the school counselors with the appropriate resources, our nurses with the appropriate resources, principals, and make them the priority to help coincide with the families to make sure that they can find the safest and supportive route for their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kathy DeCampley.
These kids, they need to feel seen. They need to be represented in classroom materials, in reading materials. They need to feel safe in their classes. They don't want to feel like their teacher might rat them out if they find something out about their identity. The classroom has to be a safe space for them where they can learn without being judged. And there need to be resources on hand for them throughout the school. A GSA and similar organizations need to be around for them. We just celebrated Coming Out Day, and celebrations like that are helpful for them. The new health standards, I think, will really help their peers understand what they go through and really normalize them and make them a part of the community.
Thank you. Next, Joel Mayer.
So to be really blunt on this, we need to get to so what? So what, meaning it should not matter. It should not matter who you love. It should not matter how you identify. We need to get to so what? We need to get to where these students, who are as vibrant, as important parts of our community as anyone else, feels that they are seen, they are heard, they are treated with respect and not attacked for their beliefs. They need to know that when they are in the school, they are safe. They need to know they have people that they can go to. But getting to so what doesn't mean ignoring the fact that there are supports that those communities often need in order to help them get to that place. So what does not mean ignore. It means quite the opposite, but that's where we need to move.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Gallagher.
So I feel like this answer could go for any group that feels marginalized. I sat in on some discussions when it regarding the African American Studies class, and teachers and students were discussing not feeling safe in the district. And, my first thought was, well, that's a culture problem, and culture comes from the top. And so if students and teachers don't feel safe defending their culture, their gender identification, their religion, anything, then that is a hierarchy problem. So why do the teachers not feel supported? Why do the students not feel supported? Is it because the administration is not supporting them? And so for LGBTQ, any group, it needs to come from the top. And so as a board member, I would hold the administration accountable to make sure that these students and all students felt comfortable in the district, teachers
you.
as well.
Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. So a couple things. First, I believe that our community values inclusivity and celebrates our diversity. I think that that's the community that I believe is out there for us in Cherry Hill. I think it's absolutely a non-negotiable. Our students must feel safe, protected, feel supported. I think there's a lot of work that's been done on student voice. And the reason that's important is our policies, is always going to support, will always support students and give that support. But what's missing? Where are the gaps? That's where I think the board comes in and says, where there are gaps, that's where we must look at policy, look at on the ground, how this is being delivered so that we are hitting that standard. Of course, any group that is feeling marginalized, that needs extra support, we have supports in place. We have staff in place that is attuned, that is able to intervene and be a help. There is what we're seeing out there more of adults targeting students and student groups. That cannot happen. So that is something the board needs to be proactively looking at and engaging.
Thank you. Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So the bottom line is that all students have a right to a quality education. Equity means identifying and removing any barriers to success so everybody has the same opportunities. And in this case, this means ensuring that students feel accepted, welcome, and above all, safe. Some of the new updates to the family life curriculum, as minor as they are a move in the right direction in creating a more inclusive environment for all. I feel that these align well with the district values and those of Cherry Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Winters.
Thank you. So as board members, we are leaders in the community, and what we say and what we do matters. Our students are listening. And unfortunately, lately, there have been outside groups that are sending disparaging messages online to our LGBTQIA students in the community. Some of these outside groups even support people who are currently running for Board of Education. To those students, we see you. We see you and we see your families. I am fully in support of inclusive materials in our public schools that represent all families in all their beautiful diversity. For those who say it's inappropriate for young children, my 5-year-old, my kindergartner, can understand that all families are different and all families are beautiful. I think that's the message that we need to send and be consistent about that, because as a member of the Board of Education, what you say matters. We see you, students in our community. You are fully included, welcomed, supported, appreciated, and loved as full members of our school community.
Thank you. Sunny Reed.
So first of all, I would want to talk to the students themselves who identify with this community and ask them what safe means to them. And whatever safe means to them is what we need to be actively working on to provide for them as a school community, because they are the ones who are experiencing the day in and day out of living in a school that they may not feel safe. So we can talk about safe all day, but it doesn't mean anything until we hear from the individual people in the groups who actively might feel unsafe. To support and protect them, first of all, I would define safety for them. Second of all, I would get community engagement and make it very visible that we support them. We talk about adults who maybe are pushing back on this. No, we need to show them that they are seen by setting the example, by providing assemblies and things that support them and where they can be seen and validated that they're not an outsider. I would also ensure that those students are represented because there's intersections of race, class, and gender that go with that same identity. And I would make sure that they had an opportunity to express that as well.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So this one's a little bit difficult for me to respond to because I guess I kind of personally am where Joel was explaining is I'm at that so what. I don't understand what's different than from any of these students in the sense that you're all here to learn and to have an environment that's safe to do that. So that being said, I think the most important thing to do to address any issues that are going in any group of people would be to understand why they feel as though they're not the same or they don't have the same abilities to learn and to grow in this environment. I don't want to make any assumptions because I don't walk their path, so I don't know. So I think hearing from them and understanding what the true issues are and breaking down the barriers that they face would be the top priority to addressing the needs of those students. Whether it be peer support, if it's a peer issue, then maybe stricter adherence to our anti-bullying policies. If it's a professional issue with our staff, then maybe more professional development for the counselors or the teachers would need to be in place. But I think we really need to understand what's going on to be able to make any changes.
Thank you. Nicholas Gaudio Jr.
So in my libertarian leanings, these are issues that are private to the student and his or her family. And it's really nobody's business what a child's sexual orientation is. It is definitely not the school's business or the school's job to know a child's sexual orientation. The best thing we can do is just teach all of our students not to discriminate against anybody. And by placing students into special categories and different boxes, we're really putting them in the spotlight and making them feel different from their peers. And inadvertently, we're marginalizing them. We need to be inclusive by incorporating all of our students together into every conversation and giving them all the same attention and all the same respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. As a newly elected board member or newly elected to a new term, would you allow current elementary students in redistricted zones to finish where they started? Why or why not? And we will start with Benjamin Ovadia.
I knew it was going to be first one of these times. I would not. I would not because as we did a tremendous amount of listening in the community and actually had to start with the way it worked out, not to say the original intention, we had to start with middle school redistricting. It turned out that was a high priority need in middle school. But once we had made that determination, the downstream effect is we asked our administration if it was possible for children to finish maybe the last couple of years of elementary school. And it seems logistically impossible. Now, should that change as a recommendation from our administration, we could certainly look at it again. But I think once the administration's weighed in their role of subject matter expertise, I think for the board to essentially say, well, you say it's not logically possible, but make it logically possible. The unintended consequences of that seem particularly dire. And so in that sense, I think this is where you lean on expertise and make the best decision you can from there. Thank you.
Next, Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So my leanings towards this are yes, or at least to give the option to do so. There are real reasons for redistricting, fixing overcrowding issues, rebalancing where the schools are. If you've ever seen how our elementary schools are zoned, they're kind of all over the place based on the order that neighborhoods were built in Cherry Hill. But I think something that's very important, and we talked about this when we did middle school redistricting, is minimizing the impact to the students, both educationally and socially. People go to school with their neighbors, their friends are there, their community is within their schools. I understand there may be some logistical issues, but I would like to prioritize minimizing that disruption to any students where we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Kimberly Gallagher.
So probably what I'm going to say is pretty similar to what the prior two have said. I think it really just kind of depends on logistics and costs. I can't stand here and preach fiscal responsibility and then want to just kind of allow, anything goes. I know from previous meetings that, transportation is really delicate. Bus drivers are at a shortage. We've had a lot of issues with, finding enough buses and routes and all that stuff. So to have to bus multiple kids to multiple locations just because we want students to finish out, as Mr. Greenbaum said, sorry if I mispronounced your name, maybe students can stay, but the parents have to provide transportation. There's a lot of ways you can look at it, and I'm coming at it straight up from you asking the question. And this is my personal opinion, but as I would listen to experts and understand the costs going forward, my mind could change.
Thank you. Joel Mayer.
So ideally, I would love to be able to tell every elementary school student that they're going to graduate from the school where they're currently being educated. The reality, and Mr. Ovadia and Mr. Greenbaum and also Ms. Gallagher have touched on this as well. Logistically, that is not going to be practical. If it is possible, while we look at all of these options, to maybe allow fourth grader to remain and complete their school in fifth grade, similar to what we did in middle school redistricting when we allowed the students to finish out at Rosa. That would be something that we'd want to look at. But the reality is that bus routes and other logistical hurdles are tremendously difficult to address. But I, with my board colleagues, are willing to look at every opportunity to minimize disruption, if at all possible.
Thank you. Kathy DeCampley.
I think this is one issue where if I were on the board, I'd want to hear from a lot more people about, because one of the issues I have is one that Ms. Gallagher brought up, and that's the buses. I've worked in a district where kids were on the bus for far too long in the morning. They already get up too early as it is. And to have them going around and trying to get to all the different schools, it just seems like quite a hassle, even though I wouldn't want my own daughter to have to switch schools in the middle of elementary school. So I think there's a lot to break down to try and figure out the best way to do that. And I feel like I'd want to hear more from the elementary schools and the people who are sending their children there before I could make a decision.
Jennifer Sharman.
I would need to also ask more questions, and I would like to have to survey the students and families as well, just to get a little more input, because it's not just all black and white. Yes, it's a numbers thing. Yes, it's transportation and it's crowding and things like that. But there's other aspects that are important as to, if it was maybe if the student is in their actual last year of that school, that they have a rapport with those teachers, they've established peers and groups. That's all very important to their success as well, just as much as they're in their education. If they just started out at the school, okay, that maybe they could be, but I think there should be more choice allotted to and consideration given to some of the families and students. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas Gaudio.
Okay, I was actually one of the many very loud voices in advocating for the grandfathering of his existing students at Rosa to be able to finish out the school year. And I was very grateful that the board decided to go along with that request from all of the families who are asking for it. However, in this situation, it's a lot more complicated with all of our dozen plus elementary schools. We definitely would have to survey the families affected, and if logistically possible, of course, there's no reason not to if it can be logistically done. Otherwise, I would believe that we should try to prioritize by the older grade levels and also sibling status. If you're allowing a fourth grader to continue, finish out a fifth grade year, but he or she has a second grade sibling, allow that student to go through. It's a temporary problem. Redistricting is always going to be ugly, but it's periodically necessary. And the best thing we could do is just try to ease the pain as much as possible on our families and students.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So without knowing what the community input is on this, I would say at face value, I would say no as well. I think that the change needs to happen somewhere. And if you just rip the Band-Aid off, sometimes that's a little bit easier to make decisions. I was actually the first sixth grade class in this district to attend middle school and transition from elementary to middle school. And I'm sure the board and parent decision at that time was similar to this. And I lived to talk about it and probably grew stronger relationships with my peers because of it. And so I would say that doing so might actually potentially fix some of the social issues that we have in this district. Exposing the children to more people outside their immediate comfort zone or their bubble might help with some of the issues that we've already discussed this evening. I think sometimes adults add issues to their children's plates that might not actually be there anyway. And children are resilient, and sometimes more exposure to other people will make them more respectful. It might break down some cliques that might filter into middle schools and high school, and it'll grow their network and potentially even grow parents' network to really be exposed to each other. We're all in the same district. If we acted like it would bring us, far from where we are now.
Thank you. Next, Sunny Reed.
I'm going to say yes. I think that they should be allowed to finish out the school year, or if that's the year. When you say finish out, I'm hoping that that's what you mean. Because with the caveat, again, that we minimize the impact to our students. It can be very disruptive to make these types of changes. And we have to account for the fact that some children may also be experiencing disruptive environments at home. And school might be the only place where they get some level of consistency. So if we're going to be truly child-centered and truly thinking about that, we need to consider those needs as well. At the same time, I also understand that transportation issues for working parents and in the middle of the year can be also very difficult to make those changes last minute. But at the same time, it could be a blessing for people to have to also make those, maybe like their kids go closer. So I'm going to say yes with the caveat that I need more information and collaboration with the rest of the board.
Thank you. Gina Winters.
Thank you. I'm just going to maybe highlight two issues that haven't been brought to the table yet about this. The first one is that elementary kids have really experienced a huge upheaval due to the pandemic in the last few years. I have a fifth grader. Her last normal year of elementary school was first grade. I mean, COVID basically ended her second grade year, and then she was home, and then it was hybrid and all these things. So this is the first year that she's sort of back in her groove as a fifth grader. They all experienced this. So I would love to minimize disruptions for these kids who really have lived through a trauma, and a trauma that we need to recognize as a community. And the other thing I would seek to highlight that hasn't been discussed tonight is the special education students who often need transportation to different schools to access their necessary special education programs. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see special education programs distributed around the district so that kids can stay in their home elementary school or as close to it as possible. I know that's not always possible depending on the number of kids in the program, but that would be a goal and a priority I'd like to set when redistricting.
Thank you. The next question. Where do you stand on the school start time issue? We will start with Nicholas Gaudio.
Okay, so when I attended school here in Cherry Hill, elementary school was 9 o'clock as it is now. However, middle school was 8:30 and high school was 8 o'clock. And I was very strict with myself about making sure I was in bed by 10:30 every night. I scrambled to get everything done after sports practices, band rehearsals, to finish all my homework, get to bed by 10:30, and I was still exhausted every single day. I didn't drink coffee or uncaffeinated diet root beer back then, which wouldn't have made a difference. However, pushing the day even earlier as it's been done is, in my opinion, absolutely detrimental to children getting the proper amount of sleep. If I couldn't get enough sleep going to bed at 10:30 and starting school at 8, I can't even imagine what it's like for these kids who have to get the bus at 7 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So I think this is a really good topic of discussion that I think we would need the community voice a lot more than to make this decision. But I think there's a lot of evidence out there that shows that high schoolers do better with a little bit later start times. But really, to make this decision, I think we need to think of all the other factors that go into this, like availability of SAC options for families that are already stretched thin with the way that the start and end times are after school activities. Even something as potentially silly as new drivers starting to drive in the beginning of rush hour would be something to consider if we're pushing them a little bit later. So there's a lot that goes into this, but I think this should be one of the main topics of discussion going forward of the next year or so.
Thank you. Sunny Reed.
I'm for high school students and middle schooler students, and in general, I would say I'm in fully support of a later start time. For some of the reasons already given, but also you have children in the community who may work and who may help support their families. You have children who may be acting as caregivers at home, whether or not we know it or not. We have children who may be helping to support their parents in some way. So those children are also trying to succeed in school and trying and struggling to keep up with the responsibilities of being a child and a teen, and then also having to come to school early. I think that's an undue burden. I would also want to know, though, what is being added to the school curriculum that justifies it being so early. And at the other end of the spectrum, I do understand that a later start time might cause some transportation issues in terms of busing and port logistics, but ultimately, I do think that I am in favor of a later start time for those reasons I gave.
Thank you. Gina Winters.
So I think that the evidence that was presented to the board about later start times for high school students was very persuasive. And as a board, we have made very clear that we support student wellness. However, on this issue, there are just so many other factors that I think haven't been fully investigated. I think for high school students, a later dismissal time would affect those who play sports and may have to be pulled out of their last period to travel to away games. And also, those same students who provide childcare or have after-school jobs. My after-school job when I was in high school started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If they're going in later and getting out later, what happens to those after-school jobs? Are they still able to hold those? At the elementary level, I'd be worried about availability of SAC programs. It's really challenging to get your kid to school at 9 a.m. if you work full-time. It's even harder when before school childcare is incredibly hard to find. So there's a lot of issues out there that I think we need to explore further before moving forward on the start time issue. Thank you.
Next, Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So I'm 100% for later start times. Children learn better when they're better rested. The science backs this. And from personal experience, 30 years ago, I used to have to wake up at 5:15 to get to school at 6:55. It's a very similar district here. But the devil is in the details here. I've followed the issue as the board has discussed this over time. There are logistical issues with transportation, a lot of challenges for single and working parents. Childcare is a real issue. Older siblings watching younger siblings, simply expanding SAC is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So I'm a hard yes on this, but I think there's still a lot of work to do to solve the logistics here. And I'd advocate for continuing to work with the Start Time Committee for more community voice.
Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. I'm going to unfortunately repeat a couple things that have been said, but I think one thing we have to follow closely is what the state mandate becomes, because if the state goes in where this is a requirement, and this was seriously considered the last legislative session, then we really need to have a model. And that's what I think the Board of Education really needs to do, create a model. Now, we're going to have to create that model and then compare it to the status quo, because the thing of it is, there's so many moving parts here. The status quo, in some ways, is something that's always going to be the natural comparison. Do I think students should be at bus stops close to 6 a.m.? I don't. Medical authorities don't. But somebody, if we're going to have, and again, there's this transportation shortage. If we're going to have these same buses running each level, that's going to be an issue. Those contracts will be an issue. Then we've got to turn the community, do more listening, figure out the shape of this issue. Absolutely, work responsibilities, childcare responsibilities, extracurricular schedules and competitions. All this must be factored in to create the model.
Thank you. Kimberly Gallagher.
You stole my talking point. I was going to mention the state. I know that last year it was discussed that the state would be looking at mandating later start time for high school. That being said, I am for it. I have a stepson at Eastern, and Eastern starts at 7:30, and he is catatonic until 9. And then I have 2 elementary age kids who start bothering me at 5:30 in the morning. So, I would be, and I'm going to be personal. This is me personally speaking. I would really love to see it only if elementary started earlier. When last year they started talking about the different options and elementary was being pushed later, I felt that that was more disruptive to families, communities, students, whatever. So I am for it. I think there are a lot of logistical elements that need to be discussed, but nothing that can't be figured out.
Thank you. Joel Mayer.
So this is one where certainly there's going to be a lot of repetition because some of this is sort of common sense. All of us are living this in one way or another. But the reality here is that it's not as simple as can we just move the high school start times back? Am I in favor of that? 100% I am. And so is the National Highway Transportation Safety Board. And so are every pediatric board in the country. That just makes all the sense in the world. And seeing the fact that our high school kids, if it were up to them, we wouldn't see them until noon. So yeah, of course that makes sense, but it's an ecosystem, right? I call it the school start time ecosystem. You can't just move one back without affecting everything. And then that brings into play the bus contracts, the lack of drivers, the fact that we can't move alone in Cherry Hill without knowing what's happening in other districts. And so everything is tied in. There's not one move. Do I favor it? I do. Is it
But
possible?
We're out of
It's
time.
difficult.
Thank you. Kathy DeCampley.
When you look at the research on sleep deprivation in teens, it's pretty bleak, the mental health issues, the physical health issues. I worked in a high school where we were all there at 7 something in the morning. And I know for teachers, in fact, it's difficult. The students got nothing out of me, at 7:30 in the morning. I'm pretty useless before 10, honestly. But the idea is always to move the elementary schools earlier, because those young kids, like you said, 6 o'clock, they're ready to go. And we're now not the only district thinking about this. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here. We can start studying similar districts to ours, see what's working and what isn't. Like I said, I think everyone's kind of on board with this. So working out those logistics, I think pretty soon we can get this going. I definitely think that high school should be starting later.
Thank you. Jennifer Sharman.
As a mom of my last 4th child is a 17-year-old. So I've been through all the teens, and as a nurse and me working in behavioral health system, I understand how sleep deprivation and things like that play a factor. However, I've surveyed my son and my son's friends, and they are completely against going at a later start time. They feel it's going to disrupt everything that they feel is important to them after school. It's their time. They're going to commit early in the morning. They say they have to get up for work once they graduate from school anyway, so they have to get used to this no matter what. And it affects their jobs. My son works, they all start at 3 o'clock. How are they going to be able to have a job? That's how they start to build and prepare for their future. It affects sports, and students or teenagers are going to stay up late one way or another, whether they're starting earlier or not. So they're going to be tired, and their hormones play a factor in that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We actually have time for an 8th question. So that will be, if elected, what Board of Education committees are you interested in working on and why? And we will start with Kimberly Gallagher.
I knew it. The one I'm like, I don't know. I guess I would say building maintenance. I've been really kind of hard, discussing fiscal responsibility and all that. And as I said, from the bond and everything, I really think that as a board and as the administration, we need to show goodwill to the community, and we need to start doing it by showing that we're not just going to take money for the bond and not manage things moving forward. So that's what I would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Sharman.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not really sure what committees are even actually out there to choose from. So I'm just going to kind of make some guesses of what I would like to be on. Is the finances. I would like to be on that just to make sure that my taxes are being well spent and the community's taxes are being well spent. And also regarding the students and me being a nurse, I really feel that I would like to be a part of anything that has to do with the physical and mental health of our students, to make sure that they're getting this proper education, making sure that it's age appropriate education and very supportive of their needs and academics.
Thank you. Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. So I'm going to go with P&L. I know a lot of people don't find policy particularly exciting, but that's the world I live in my workplace. I do a lot of work reading, interpreting, developing policy. Even with the district, I've read through a lot of the policies of the district. When I want to know something, before I ask questions, I go look it up myself, and I find it very interesting. And I think it's also a pathway to helping to improve school climate. Looking at the code of conduct, how we could create a more inclusive environment through policy. Looking at things like, why is our S12 policy longer and different than other districts within New Jersey? It's the same compliance. But that's it. I mean, I love policy. I think it's a great way to be able to improve our district with the input of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. This is a difficult question. I really love strategic planning, though. Question is, and if people come in 2 days, they'll hear the board discuss it. What is strategic planning post bond? And what I'd like to see, give you a little preview, is I'd like to see it turn into more of a communications committee. A lot of times, what's the board ecosystem of getting ideas from the community? A lot of times it's us saying, look, this is something that's important, or a student group, but it's not mechanized in a way where we can have that great two-way dialogue with the community, figure out what we should be focusing on beyond what's in our purview today. If that's what strategic planning is, then I would love to do it next year. The other thing, just from a board planning perspective, our CNI chair will not be a board member in January, so she's not running again. So I'd like to give support there. I think there's a lot CNI can do in terms of special ed, in terms of academic excellence, in terms of dual credit opportunities, in terms of world-class experience. I'd like to be a part of that as well.
Thank you. Next, Sunny Reed.
Well, Adam, I have to say that I find policy exciting also. I find that policy is particularly important because that's where your top down comes from. That's where your top down leadership comes from. That's what sets the tone and stage for students and teachers to be able to work and collaborate together. That's what sets the tone for the whole culture of the policy. I think I would really be able to contribute that with my background in theoretical childhood studies that covers a very broad interdisciplinary field, particularly in education. So I think that historical background would help drive some of that. The other one would obviously be committee for curriculum. I recently just got involved with the AAPI curriculum push for Asian American Pacific Islander instruction. I think that because of my background and work in my current industry of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I would have a really good insight into how to contribute and guide some of those changes in procedures.
Thank you. Nicholas Gaudio.
So I'm going to have to apologize for not knowing the exact names of every committee out there, but generally the committees with which I'd want to get involved would be the ones that would handle school safety, number one, primarily school safety. My background's in information security engineering and also personal security. And I think I'd be able to contribute a lot to that oversight. STEM and technology, again, fits into my field. I would like to get involved there, especially when it is affecting the curriculum. So committees that determine the curriculum, I'd like to be involved there. And I also would like to propose, as I mentioned earlier, a new apolitical oversight committee that would ensure that our students are not being politically manipulated by the administration or staff and faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So I think I made it clear that one of my passions is SAC expansion and preschool expansion. So that's something I would love to work on. I also agree about communications. And I think that even though the board is transparent about what goes on here, and this is all public information, a lot of times the public can't decode the conversations and the information that's given to them. So I think if there's a way that we can make transparency look transparent to everyone. But I would say the thing that I'm most passionate about would be fair funding. I just recently left a position as a nurse manager in the COVID ICU of our local level 1 trauma center. And for 2 years straight was advocated for certain budget issues that we faced in that unit and was told that I just didn't understand what was going on. That's just the way it is. That's how it is. This is, you just have to deal with it. I finally was able to sit down and we were able to figure out that there was a budget line missing and I was able to change the practice in that unit. So that's something that I really would love to do with the state and the other people on that committee, is to see where we can advocate for ourselves and advocate for this district to get what's owed to us and what's fair for us.
Thank you. Gina Winters.
Well, I am very lucky because upon joining the board in August, I got assigned to my two dream committees, P&L, Policy and Legislation, and C&I, which is Curriculum and Instruction. I'm a policy analyst. That's what I do. I have my master's degree in public policy with a specialization in education policy. I focused on school finance and early childhood education. I worked for the state legislature as a senior policy analyst and a committee aide. And my role in that as a nonpartisan staffer was to take policy ideas, collaborate with different groups from all across the political spectrum, and turn them into workable solutions that the entire community would benefit from. That is what I've done with my entire life. That is my career. And that is a skill set that I don't think anybody else has that I would love to contribute going forward to the Board of Education.
Thank you. Joel Mayer.
I'm fortunate now to sit on two committees that I enjoy greatly. One, Business and Facilities. I look forward to hopefully remaining in that position because that's going to be the committee where we're going to do a lot of the hard work to ensure that the bond monies and projects go forward as expected. So I look forward to doing that. I also sit on strategic planning. And to Mr. Ovadia's point, I hope that his vision of strategic planning is what it is, because I very much enjoy looking forward. What is it going to be? How do we move the district beyond the pandemic? That to me is very exciting work. But my background is also policy and legislation. I've spoken frequently at national conferences, at higher education conferences, assisting them in developing policies for their colleges. And I also work with the legislatures, both the federal government and state of California on the California Student Loan Bill of Rights. So it's natural work for me, and I would look forward to skipping over to that committee if I could.
Thank you. And finally, Kathy DeCampley.
I would say first, public policy, because I do have a background in policy. First in communicating federal legislation. And then I'm also in the public policy committee of the New Jersey Library Association. I enjoy just kind of really digging into policy. And then like an hour later, you realize you've been staring at the document and you find so much you didn't realize was in there. I also like curriculum because as a school librarian, you kind of had to have this really top-down look at what was being taught in the school, almost like a curriculum map. And so I really enjoy seeing that broad approach to education.
Thank you. That concludes the question and answer portion of our forum. Now we go to closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for a closing statement in the reverse order of the opening statement, and the timekeeper will give a 15-minute warning. And we begin with Nicholas Gaudio Jr.
Our residents paid an average of $10,000 per household in property taxes for the avoidable failures of the recent school years. The current BoE and superintendent failed our children. Our post-COVID test scores have been appalling, and the Cherry Hill voting population 20 years ago would have thrown all of them out of office for these failures. An effective BoE should include members with diverse ideologies and the ability to make decisions that will thrust Cherry Hill's educational institutions back towards the academic excellence most of us were accustomed to experiencing prior to these failures. The current philosophically homogeneous BoE has been a pass-through for the superintendent's flawed proposals and policies and political extremists' agendas. Our BoE is full of virtue signalers who make and enforce district policies, hypocritically insisting that our children continue to be treated like prisoners in their classrooms if they don't follow the same political agenda as the district leaders. As your candidate, I vow to oppose all abusively oppressive and restrictive district policies to ensure responsible spending of your taxpayer dollars, to encourage all of our residents to get involved with major BoE decisions that affect our curriculum, budget, and health education, to respect the rights of all parents to remain active partners in their children's education, regardless of their belief systems, and to welcome all families' values. Our families are the strength of our district. We need to embrace the freedom of all parents to instill their values in their children. We must end the silencing of parents and give them back their voices and freedom to fight for their children. A vote for Gaudio is a vote for freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Winters.
I've only been on the board for a short time, but in that short time, I have really, truly enjoyed the intense work that it takes to be a member of your Board of Education. The Board of Education is the voice of the community. We are your elected officials. We are asking you to decide between us for a 3-year or 1-year term going forward. That's because we represent you. We represent the community, and we are here to listen. The proof is in the pudding, like I said before. The bond referendum that was put forth by the administration and the Board of Education passed by almost a 70% affirmative vote. There were almost double the yes votes than the number of no votes. So you have to ask yourself, who's listening to the community? Who represents your voice? Who is planning with you, collaborating with you on the future of Cherry Hill for our students now and for the students of future generations? We are not a group of people who is different from you. We are parents. We are teachers. We are volunteers in the community. We are Girl Scout leaders. We are soccer coaches. We are out there, same as you are. The best part, honestly, about being on the board these past few weeks has been getting out into the schools and listening to you and hearing each distinct school community, what their aspirations are and what they represent, and working together with all of you to move forward towards one Cherry Hill with an educational opportunity that ensures that every single child in this community, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their background, is able to achieve their full potential as a member of our school community. That's my vision for Cherry Hill. That's my vision going forward.
Thank you. Joel Mayer.
So I'm going to date myself with these remarks. A couple days ago, one of my daughters asked me to find something, which I still haven't found. But while I was looking for it, I came across something else. And yes, I have a prop. It's a baseball. And why it's important, and why I wanted to bring it out today, is that this is a ball that I caught in the summer of 1980 at a Phillies game. And I brought it to a friend's house that night. A bunch of us were getting together and they all signed it. This is a connection that I have with Cherry Hill. I did not grow up here. I grew up in an adjacent district, but I looked up to my friends in Cherry Hill, partly because they looked up to their teachers. They loved their teachers at both Cherry Hill East and Cherry Hill West. They signed this ball, and I still have it from 1980. I have always felt something special about Cherry Hill and the schools here. I have another, I didn't bring the prop, but I'm going to date myself further. That same summer, I was driving around in a not too attractive 1975 Oldsmobile Cutlass. It had an actual bumper sticker on the back. The bumper sticker was Cherry Hill West, class of 1980. I didn't graduate from Cherry Hill West, but I wanted to. That's how important Cherry Hill has always been to me. And even though I didn't graduate, I found myself in the last 9 months with the ability to help others graduate with a strong foundation. And I look forward to doing that in the next 3 years.
Thank you. Renee Sherfain.
So I'd just like to say thank you for everybody for being here and the thoughtful questions that were presented to us today. I look forward to serving my community and being a voice to those who might not necessarily have found theirs yet. I'm committed to excellence and providing our children with the structure, accountability, and the opportunity that they need to grow and develop their voice and maybe one day fill these seats as our future leaders. I hope that my professional background and the fact that I haven't been super far removed from the seats that our students are sitting in will allow me to bring my innovative perspective to this board and ensure that we're moving forward by including everything and all the good work that has been done to date, but also by not making some of the same mistakes that have been made throughout the last couple of years and honestly decades. I hope that this will lead us into not having these same difficult discussions and decisions that we are facing today for our future.
Thank you. Adam Greenbaum.
Thank you. As an involved parent, I've been very engaged with their school district for the last 2.5 years. I've taken the time to meet with various experts, including parents, professionals, and advocates, to become well-versed in the wide array of issues that are facing our district, from school funding, accessibility, special education, school climate, and striving for equity and inclusion for all of our students. I'm ready to hit the ground running, and I hope to have the opportunity to serve our schools and our community as a member of the board. If you'd like to learn more about me or my platform, please visit my website at greenbaumforboe.com. I'd like to say thank you to Zone PTA and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight, and thank you to my fellow candidates for the great discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy DeCampley.
My family has just started on our educational journey here in Cherry Hill. but I'm already so pleased with the care that Josie has received by her teachers, her administrators, and her school staff. If elected, I would consider it my responsibility to continue and improve upon Cherry Hill's reputation for excellence. First, by ensuring social and emotional learning is available. And I think some people are a little confused by that. And it's something that I'm really pleased here at Cherry Hill. As someone who was raised in a household where no one went to college and no one had professional experience, I was that person who didn't know how to react when I first got into an office. And I'm really pleased that Josie will learn how to be able to speak to her peers in college and beyond because of what she's learning here in Cherry Hill. I'll also, by providing access to diverse reading material and learning materials free of censorship by standing up to book bans. I'll also fight for fully funded libraries, staffed by certified media specialists, and supporting teachers and administrators by protecting them from slanderous name calling that's occurring on public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunny Reed.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun tonight. As a board member, my goal, again, as I said in the beginning, was that I'm not here for me. I'm here to be the person that I wish I had representing children like me when I was growing up. As a board member, I want to shine the light on the children and families who just go through the motions, who going to school is a chore, attending school functions is a chore. I want to shine a light on those families so that they doesn't have to be like that, so that they don't show up and find that there's language barriers, that there's barriers because they have odd working hours, that because anything, that they have disabilities. I'm here to make sure that they are seen and they are visible and they are truly catered for. I'm here so that all families and children not just have a seat at the table, but they can bring their own chair, and whatever that looks like to them. I'm here because I believe that to be a community that truly fosters belonging, that we can have conversations that might be uncomfortable, but we don't have to walk away as friends, but we can walk away with a respect and general understanding for each other's lived experiences, because that's how we grow. And that's the model that we need to be showing our children. And that comes from the board and that comes from the administration. And those are the things that are going to help our children have the future they deserve. I'm going to be doing this advocacy work whether I'm on the board or not. So I put my email address out there in my marketing materials for this campaign. Whether I'm on the board or not, talk to me. I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Ovadia.
Thank you. Once again, thank you to Cherry Hill Zone PTA, the League of Women Voters. Even though there's not a counterpart with League of Women Voters, I want to shout out Lisa, who I know has worked hard tonight from Zone. Also, the tech team and administrators who came in today on a day off to make sure we all look good. And also, you know what, to the panel, right? It takes a lot of courage to run for public office. Having done this the longest of this panel, I could tell you, there's not a lot of glory in it, but it's important, tremendously important, critical work. Keep you up at night, but it's for little people who depend on us, and everyone has the courage to put yourself out there and the public scrutiny that comes along with it. I've worked for this town a long time, 10 years, as I said before. I've worked hard because I believe it's critically important. I think this is the only role I think that's quite like this and that has the gravity of impact on this township. And it's just, I think I have a little bit more to give. I put myself out there. I think before my family threw me out, I think I had one more year that they would put up with. But there's a lot I want to do, and there's a lot of great work ahead. I will say I'm not going to answer everything tonight. You can reach out to my email address, but it shouldn't be my district email address for the campaign. You should, if you have questions after tonight, ben1721@aol.com. Yes, AOL. But I do check it all the time and delete spam on the regular. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you to the voters for their consideration. Ask for your vote. I'll understand either way, and have a great night. Thank you again.
Thank you. Kimberly Gallagher.
So I'm coming from a position where for the last 2 years, I have participated in watching board meetings and administration decisions that have just entirely pissed me off. Excuse my language. And I want to be the board member to speak for the people who felt like me for the last 2 years, who had to listen to ridiculous reasons as to why schools wouldn't open during COVID restrictions, why certain, medical CDC decisions were valid, but yet others are not. I am sick of listening to nonsense and, you know, just kind of ridiculous reasons as to why the district cannot manage our money properly and cannot, you know, they would, you know, as a board member, you're representing the community as a whole, not just students. And so I would like to be someone who focuses on all of us, the community as well, taxpayers, everybody, because I feel like our voice is not being heard. I work hard for my money and I have no problem giving it to the district if I felt like it was being used properly. I feel like the board has not held the administration accountable, and I would like to do that. I hold myself to very high standards, and I will do that for the administration. So if you would like to vote for someone who's different, please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Sharman.
I'm going to quote something actually from our Cherry Hill beliefs, actually, which says that schools must partner with families in our community to foster lifelong learning. I do not feel as though we've been representing this well enough. I think that we can do better. As a mom and as a taxpayer and have kids that have gone through this school, I've been frustrated like Kimberly with all the inconsistencies, the yo-yoing, the non-transparencies. So I feel we need to improve our school academics. Again, by having more focus on core academics and STEM, we need more transparency with our curriculums and finances, more respect for all family values and all beliefs, and better communication with all families. We need age-appropriate sex education with permissions and respect of family beliefs and values. And a vote for me is a vote for your voice, for the academic excellence and community voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes closing statements. The League of Women Voters of Camden County and the Cherry Hill Zone PTA extend their sincere gratitude to the candidates for participating in this forum and to the audience members who joined us online in order to better inform themselves about this election. Remember to vote on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th, or by mail ballot, or by in-person early voting Saturday, October 29th through Sunday, November 6th. Thank you, and please encourage your friends and neighbors to vote as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.